We also got a bit of an indication that if the parliament does not return, and my expectation is when you are clearing the decks like this, when the valedictory speeches have taken place, that at the very least there is a better than likely chance of parliament not returning. I know Philip Curry was talking with Steve Price a bit earlier, and as I've told you before, I bet the House on much of his analysis. He thinks they might come back for a couple of weeks in February, but not a March budget. Instead, a couple of weeks to maybe set up a wedge in the lead up to an election, which may well end up being more like March rather than April or May, which is the latest it can possibly be. Well, today we saw a Prime Minister trying to look confident, with ministers yawning behind him and Peter Dutton knowing that the wind is currently at his back. Now, as I've said multiple times, you would prefer to be in the position of Peter Dutton right now, according to the polls, where they are currently leading. They're leading on the issues that matter. They're leading on the perception of right track, wrong track. But of course, the Prime Minister thinks that more elbow solves every problem. James Campbell, writing about the opinion poll I went through some detail last night about, where the country does not think that it's that the government has the right priorities, and now a very slim but still majority of people think Dutton is ready to govern. He talks about the Redbridge poll, and the Redbridge poll of public opinion also found that almost half of all voters think the country's headed in the wrong direction, compared to less than a third who think it's headed in the right direction. The worrying picture of voter sentiment after 2.5 years of elbow time shows the people most alienated from the government are not bosses, but Labor's traditional blue-collar base, the same types of people who earlier this month fled from the Democrats to Donald Trump. Now, as always, when there are these opinion polls, I also like to try to show you some of the comments which the pollsters receive from the people who are telling us which way they may think about voting or are considering voting going into a federal election. The reading is not good for the Prime Minister. Again, a bunch of people, including Stuart, who says, shock, new poll, I've been expecting this one from the day he took office. John, President Clinton said it's about the economy, stupid. Well, it was his staffer, but you get the point. Albo's never understood that and has spent too much time and too much of his mandate on pet projects that no one cares about, for example, $450 million on The Voice. An anonymous person says that, or somebody who wanted to remain anonymous, that people have had enough of the costly woke agenda and that adds no value to society, and seek a return of governance for the majority. No surprise. Bree says there's no doubt if Albanese and his government were given another term, things would be far worse than the damage that they have already created. Bronwyn, get rid of this rotten woke government who is so out of touch with the people. Bring on Dutton as quickly as we can. Well, an election has to play out before then. I've told you before, unless we start to see data that the Teals are going to be swept away, we're probably dealing with a minority Labor government, as frustrating as that could be, because we'd all love to see the back of this terrible government for all the reasons we have articulated on this show for, well, before they became the government, and certainly have been proven right every day since. And we got to see a little bit of a taste of some of the messaging, some of the attack lines which are going to be rolled out by both of these leaders. First, Anthony Albanese, get ready for him to say a version of this 1,000 times between now and when you vote.
We're getting things done. They're just getting angry, as we just saw during the last question. We're acting responsibly. They're acting recklessly. We're cutting the cost of living. They're cutting Medicare, pensions and housing. That's what they want to do. We're fighting for Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. They want people to work longer for less. We're fighting inflation. They're fighting amongst themselves.
You know how that is not true. You know, oh, we're focused on cost of living. Their government, their term, $1,500 taken off 10 million workers. They've turned around and spent billions of dollars off budget, so they don't have to account for it in a budget which is in deficit right now. And the expectations are, remember, under this government, their forecast into the future is deficits every year between now and the 2060s. And of course, when it comes to cost of living, we know that they talk a certain talk, but the walk that Australia has had to go on has been painful. It's been 3 Christmases in a row now where people have had to tighten their belts. There is nothing left. But we said that last year, which means that we have to find something else to pull back on, and people, frankly, they're cutting down to the bone marrow in too many cases. 3 million people. 3 million people this close to homelessness. They can say whatever they want. Their political operation will try to pretend that up is down, that left is right, that these are not the droids you're looking for, all of that Jedi mind trick stuff. What they'll be up against is Peter Dutton. And Peter Dutton, who can remain relentless on a message that I think is closer to reality. We'll see how it plays out at the election.
The Australian people cannot believe how incompetent and weak your government has been over the last 2.5 years. Your government wasted $450 million on The Voice and divided our country. And on economic and energy policies, you've done nothing but drive up the prices of everything. Prime Minister, why not call an election now to put Australians out of their misery and allow a competent coalition government to get our country back on track?